Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa. And it's Double Dose Jessie Day. How happy is
Hello.
everyone?
Good, good.
Yeah, we haven't had a double dose of you for quite a while, so I think it's time. And we're very happy to be having a double dose of you today, Jessie.
Yeah.
I would consider that it's my birthday on Saturday, so that would be a good
Ooh.
birthday present. Yeah. Thank you for that, Jess. Anyway, hello everybody. Really good to see you all in the chats, and the usual suspects are always there. Really good to see you, joyful Janine. Always smile when I see your name. Colleen, I see you. Yeah, Jessie. Really good to see you guys. Lisa D, of course, as well. Kimberly, good to see you guys. Anyway, so today we are going to be, actually, I mean, I know we want to just start off in prayer again, but okay, let's do that first because we've been having some shenanigans with my tech equipment
Yeah.
just before we started the show. So let's maybe just open up in prayer again, Jess, and then we'll
All right.
do the intro to the show. Yeah.
So, Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you that this is a glorious day that you have made. We ask that we may rejoice in it and be glad in it. We ask that you would just provide protection over all equipment, all airways, all Wi-Fi's for everybody. And we ask, Lord, that this would be a show that glorifies your name. We ask in your powerful name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. Amen to that. Yeah, it was funny because my camera is starting to play all sorts of silly buggers, which is very interesting. And I mean, I know with Jerry Marzinski's show on, was it Friday, Saturday? I mean, he could not get in. And then so we went on Zoom because that's how you could get in. And then it took me onto solutions of Zoom as well. Caleb was in and out. Eventually Caleb was completely kicked out of the show, which was very interesting as well. It was just one of those
Oh,
very interesting times. But yeah, they obviously don't like the topics we're talking about, but we don't
right.
really care, do we? We're
We're
going to
going to
go
talk
ahead and
about
do
them
it
anyway.
anyway. Yeah, exactly. So we were talking last week about the New World Order agenda, and I was just saying to Jessie as well, it's interesting for me to see this because a lot of the stuff that's kind of coming up in, I wouldn't say mainstream media yet, but yes, there's definitely certain things in mainstream media that are being spoken about now. But 3 years ago, we were doing shows on this, and now suddenly I'm seeing stuff on Twitter that people are talking. And I'm going like, we spoke about that years ago. So it's just sort of highlighting to me again that maybe we should highlight quite a few of those topics again that we spoke about even back then now, because it seems to me like a lot more people are paying attention. I don't want to say waking up because I really think that's a bit rude. But I think it's, more people are paying attention. And I do think this pandemic has certainly rattled a lot of people's cages to realize there's a lot more dodginess going on. And we're seeing a lot more, and we're going to be doing it in the second show, digging into some of the celebrities and their symbolism again. We know that the celebs are certainly used as puppets to draw people in, so the symbolism they're using and stuff like that. It's just a good, it's good to do it. It's I wouldn't say it's fun. Things like this are not fun. Fun for me is in other areas, but it's good to know what they're up to, and so we can just kind of do like a little bit of a refresher, if you will, for those that have been watching this channel for a while. So yeah, Jess, let's talk about more of the things. I mean, last week we focused a lot on the family unit and what are they doing to break down the family unit in particular, which I thought was very, very interesting. So again, I think maybe something like artificial wombs, hermaphrodites, that sort of thing.
I think, I think it really goes into that next topic. We kind of covered the family unit in general, but there was much more sinister things being targeted towards families and that family unit. And it included, the marriage relationship, where you start to see a lot of the, um, we'll just say the bisexuality, where, you may have men that are married, but at the same time, they're either engaged in forms of prostitution or, with that, it could be forms of adultery where, they're mixing and matching. Um, and that's very common as we start to look through this Luciferian brotherhood, that we see that there becomes a blending, that there isn't a distinguishing anymore. Um, you end up with very casual relationships, and as as it started to kind of come more out into the open, we've seen a shift from, let's just say, even the 1940s, after World War II, all the way to present. You saw a very heavy focus on the family unit through the 40s to 60s. Even, I would say, even to the early 80s, there was a huge focus on how the family units were defined. And then, you began to see this shift where there was a real breaking down, and family units were no longer, shown as they were intended to be. And I think that that's partly because people just couldn't uphold the fullness of the duality,
Right.
where, they're living one way, you know, uh, saying they're going to work, saying that's where the money is coming from, but really, you know, th- I think that a lot of it was the love of self, pleasure, and money, that they couldn't sustain that, as well as come home and be the dad who's married and exclusive to his wife.
Right.
So we see that huge breakdown. So with that, we also get into, the Lebensborn program, which was, the Nazis' program for breeding elite children, children that have the genetic codings that they're looking for, that they're profiling for, children with the spiritual gifts that they want. And that even began, um, 1930s, 35, I think, through, um, they said they dissolved it in 1945, but I don't believe it was dissolved. In fact, my experience is that it was not dissolved. They just changed it to different names. So, when I talk about in the system, the breeder programs, those are connected to the Lebensborn. And, you know, what were those? Some of those were connected to the Genesis 6 project, where with that, they're looking specifically for what they consider Nephilim genes, um, those that they would consider to be godlike qualities. Then you
Right.
get into some of the just completely messed up programs, which are going to fit under. Oh, are we back?
Yes. Can you
All
hear
right,
me?
I'm gonna keep talking because I'm not sure if we're back yet or not. But oh,
Yeah, carry on. We can hear you. Carry on, Jess. I don't. Just someone in the audience. Just tell me if you guys can hear Jessie. Can you hear me, Jess?
yeah, I can
Okay.
now.
Now I can.
Looks like we're back.
Yeah. Sorry. You. Yeah. You.
So
I could carry.
yeah, so yep. So a lot of that then changed into, we talked about the Genesis 6 project, but then you also had what they considered Project X. Um, and X is kind of, if you look at that letter itself, you have a representation of both the male compass on the bottom, and the female chalice on the top. And, the Project X was a very focused on the females and those that, carried certain genes. Um, these women were, oftentimes um, hand selected, where, they're selected to carry certain lineage seeds. And you can, there's several things you can look for in regards to that project. Like a lot of times, like if you go walk around the really old churches, the old Catholic churches, and within the brick, like you'll see like certain things carved out. So as you walk around, like if you see an X carved out, that usually meant that that was an entrance for their students that were considered part of that Project X program. And the rooms that are adjoined there are places where, you know, they would be, I guess, putting that project into practice. Or, um, it could be too, like if they had nurseries, like that was something that I remembered was, um, there would be these German nurses that, like, literally they would have the one room, like, was shaped like a pentagon, and like it had stairs that funneled like within that room that were shaped like the pentagon that went down, and there was a hole in the floor. And that hole was there because if they decided that that child, you know, was what they considered soulless or not worth keeping, that child went into the hole. And, along the very top of that wooden staircase, there would be rows and rows of, layered cribs, kind of like the old cribs in churches where they had like the bar that would come down in front. And I just remember there being, babies in there. And a lot of
Yeah,
times,
okay, I want to just ask you, when you say went into the hole, what does that exactly mean?
that there was a hole that went deep into the ground.
And the kid
And
was like literally thrown into the hole.
yeah,
And what happened to it then? I mean, obviously it died, right? But
correct. And we'll be specific with that, that most of the time, I would say almost every time it died by being eaten by something.
I was going to say, it doesn't
Yeah.
sound to me like it's just going to go there and collect dust or
Yeah.
rot, excuse my graphicness, but then it would be food for something.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what it was food for? Not really.
Yeah. I
Not
mean,
really.
like what, like I've talked about the pits or the holes that, they'll have these dragon type creatures that they
Right.
feed. And a lot of these were built above, those feeding grounds, some of them.
I just suddenly feel nauseous. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. There's just so little respect, right? There's just, the more we hear these stories, the more apparent it becomes. They have no regard for humans. There's no compassion, there's no kindness, there's no
Yeah, only
tenderness.
for those that they feel are, part of the worthy race.
Worthy, worthy of whatever, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. That's very disturbing. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
So then
No,
they
it's
would have
these
cribs of other babies. Yeah, sorry, what you were saying there.
yeah,
They
the
would
cribs
have.
of the babies were around, like, stacked up and around in there in the nurseries and stuff. But um you can find out if your area or if certain people in your area were connected to those programs. Um, our graveyards are a wealth of information about the brotherhood that are operating within our areas. So I encourage people, go to your graveyards and just look at the headstones. And if you see any headstones that look like, they look like they have the money sign. So you'll see like an S, and then like it will look like it's got 3 Roman columns through it. That's one of the signs for the Lebensborn programs. It represents the seed of Satan. So, if you're seeing that, it means either, that area was used. Some of those headstones will mark entrances or exits into underground areas where parts of that program may have been operating, or it marks, the gravestones of those who were considered uh, Lebensborn. Um, those they considered the seed of Satan. So as you look further, we also see it beyond like, the churches, which, you can see the X there. Um, the biggest, I think, facility for Project X was connected to Greenbrier and to the Greenbrier Academy School for Girls. And when you let me think how to put this. Like the elite, they were always, trying to use spiritual gates to get from a point A to a point B. So some of their symbology would be used in certain rooms or places, and then they would know it would take them somewhere. So one of the biggest places where we see that Project X access point is in the Oval Office. Above the doors and stuff, the door frames, you'll see an X, and you'll see like what looks like a Temple of Artemis kind of doorway. We've talked about how, when you see kind of those Greek Roman style
Right.
doorways with the triangles on top, and then the pillars that represents, the temples of Artemis and stuff. Which also is connected to what they call, the project, the Greek islands. So all of that is connected to Project X, and they're trying to breed the perfect individuals. They try all sorts of methods, which that's where you then get into, the fake wombs, the like the hybrids, where they're trying to, do surgery in the womb. You get where they're trying to do connect children to artificial intelligence. Um, so you start to get into some of that stuff.
When we're looking at the X, I mean, what is the connection? Because recently Twitter became X. There's got to be some connection then. So what would you say is that connection?
Yeah, I think what it, like I said, what it represents is, that the X, you've got the female chalice at the top, the
Yeah.
women that are considered those who are Lebensborn, who breed the perfect men, which the compass is on the bottom. So in a way, it's kind of X would be, I guess if I were to put the symbology into something, I think it is kind of became a homage to, to those women that they considered to be the mothers of the gods.
So crazy. Wow. And then you say from there, obviously it's the false wombs. And I would imagine that would then also just, at the turn of the century, again, I know we've done shows on this and also with Caleb, at the turn of the century, where these babies there were just these hundreds of kids, thousands of kids just coming out of nowhere, right? These Cabbage Patch Kids, those, that sort of thing. We were seeing these fairs, these baby fairs, all these infants in little incubators, and people were buying them, right? We were seeing that at sort of the end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s. So I'm assuming then, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that would have been part of the same project, right?
I think, earlier it probably had different names. I've brought out how, a lot of those breeder programs are connected in symbology to the roses, where, you have the blue rose that's going to represent more, the blue rose is going to be closer to Project X, because you have the females that are focused on raising up boys in that program who, are going to be their perfect specimens. Um, when you look at Project Lebensborn, there was a medal of honor that they would give out to the mothers, and in that you see the blue cross. So that's connected to, the Order of the Blue Rose, which a lot of those women would be connected to. You have the yellow roses, which are connected to the breeding of high-level priestesses, those who are skilled in different forms of, magic or witchcraft. Those women are going to be raised up to be, seers, advisors, those who are good at predictions to be able to advise world leaders. Then you have, the white rose and the red rose programs, which, um, the white rose usually focuses on females, and that's going to be, females that are going to be married to high level men in the system, and they'll be sponsored usually by the Rotarians. And then the red rose is going to be, again, males. Usually that's going to be those who are selected for Sovereign Military Order of Knights Templars. So they'll be, more focused on gearing knights. And, the majority of those knights are going to be introduced to, forms of homosexuality. So,
Wow. I mean, this has been going on since
yeah, for
forever and ever.
centuries,
Yeah,
like you would see it in the old, you just look back into the old architecture and you see all these same symbols being used. They found their way and found ways to indicate without, people really knowing or understanding the fullness of all the interconnections. And, think about it, just go through, look at interiors of mansions or castles. You see a lot of this symbology there. That they would know just by coming up to a castle and by the architecture, what that family line was known for. If that was a family line where the women were pristine, or, what level those women were at, if it was somebody they wanted to pursue, in that household.
so gone is the fallacy that this is really orchestrated by men, because in this patriarchal society, I think so many of us have been under the false illusion that it is men that has controlled and governed this entire system.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been an equal amount of women who have been participating, and as we've spoken about before, probably more cruel and more evil than the men. And really, in the sense that, if you think about a woman, she gives life, she gives birth, right? She's there to nurture, to care, to protect. So there's that false illusion again that women will be there to
Right.
protect and take care of. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, they are more, in many ways, more vicious than their male
Vicious,
counterparts.
firm hands, where their job is, as I called it, the virtue squad.
Right.
Really, at the end of the day, what they're skilled in is perfectionism and a
Right.
form of godliness. Um, making sure that your form is perfect. But again, it's not true godliness. It's just that image of godliness, not really
Right.
having a relationship with God or knowing how to have that relationship, and
Mm.
why is that? It goes all the way back to Genesis 6 when you had the fallen angels seeking to mate with the women. And what were the things that those angels, what was the knowledge that they carried that they passed on? It was all forms of, witchcraft, sorcery, divination, and that's what they taught the women to walk in. So when we look at that, even as it plays out, past like when we look at all of these things, artificial womb, what is that? It's a way to bypass God's natural design. They're, they're creating all sorts of wombs. Um, in that, what is missed? Everything that God designed that womb to be. It was meant to be a place where a child felt safe, where a child, for over 9 months would hear their mother's voice.
Right.
There was a bond that began to be created in that so that when the child was born, that child would have a desire to thrive and you know, to seek out food. Um, there's an interesting study, which I don't know if many people are aware of this, but they showed the difference between mothers that had epidurals in Australia and those who just naturally birth their child. And with that, like, in a lot of the hospitals nowadays, like the moment a child is born, they'll remove um, that kind of mucus layer that is over the child from the placenta fluid. And anyway, but the study showed that when that fluid is kind of left on place and the child is just placed on the mother's stomach, literally the child will start to crawl around on the stomach and will look for the food that it smells and will start nursing on its own. And when you have children that are under the drugs or all of that makes the child sleepy, so they don't have the natural instinct then to thrive. That's denied them.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, and that is influential in bonding as well. Not saying that, you know, the children then can't bond, but it's just there's a difference, like they showed in the study. Like you wouldn't think that a newborn baby could actually start to crawl and, find its way to a food source, but they can. So, um,
Yeah, instinctive. It makes such perfect sense what you're saying. But what
yeah,
about, I'm interested then, since we're on that topic, if we're looking at mothers who are giving birth via C-section, cesarean section, or natural birth. And
mhm,
now, of course, I know that there are times where there are birth complications and a
yeah,
C-section is very necessary. I'm not talking about that. But I know a couple of years ago, and it was a few years after my son was born. I remember at that stage, it was still very much a thing. The mother gave birth naturally,
mhm,
um, unless there were complications, right?
right,
But I know a few years after that, the doctors, and it was a whole big scandal, yeah, because it was almost like the doctors didn't want to be called out of their comfort zones to have
mhm,
to say, oh, well, so and so's in labor. Oh, well, so and so's in labor. You've got to come running. They were
yeah,
planning births and giving them via C-section because that was something they could then plan around. And
yes,
also, a lot of mothers were saying, well, they didn't want their, and I mean, I'm getting graphic here, but they didn't want their vaginas stretched to the point of giving birth because they didn't think
mhm,
that sexually they'd be as desirable anymore after that. So there was a lot of talk around that. So what is
yeah,
your take then on that? And please, and I want to just say to people in the audience as well, I'm not talking about those moms who've had to do it that way. I'm talking about
Yeah.
for vanity purposes, because there's a whole process of actually giving birth through the birth canal. I mean, the probiotics and stuff that the child picks up through the birth canal are very good for the immune system, etc., etc., etc. It's all part of the process. I'd like to hear
Well, it went
your take.
farther than that, beyond the C-section, where they even, began to have surrogate wombs. And,
Right.
within the system, those aren't always, other women, you get where they've attempted to, make animals surrogate wombs, then they made artificial surrogate wombs. Um, Again, that all plays a part, into the foundational emotional, I think it beyond emotional, physical, spiritual aspect of that child's foundation where, you know, there's a difference when it's my belief from what I've experienced that children know. I've seen children born where, they're it was a hard situation, maybe, let's just say maybe it was a rape situation, but the mother chose to still, birth that baby and plan to adopt it. In that, there's a rejection, and that child still feels that. Now,
Right.
we're not saying that, it's wrong to adopt out based on your situation, but there's still, there's emotional components that a child picks up on even in the womb. It's
Right.
fascinating how God made us that, and that can play a part into how children feel, where, I've seen later where, children that they may have not even known they were adopted, yet in their preteen, teenage years, they start to emotionally struggle um, with those feelings of rejection, and they don't know where it's coming from or why they're feeling that way. Um, and I think it's because, in their heart of hearts, they know that there's a difference. They know that there's something missing, and they just,
Absolutely.
don't know what it is yet.
Just on the topic of adoption, and I do believe I saw beautiful Kerry Saint in the audience here today, and I always want to really recommend that everybody watch the shows we do with Kerry Saint, because she's an advocate for the adoptees, and she's Australian, and she's a little thing, like less than 5 feet tall, but a little firebrand of note, and what she's been through. But also, I mean, I know through the work I've done over the years that when the child is in the womb, she takes on, or he takes on, knows exactly what's going on in that womb. And as you say, has that consciousness so that when the baby's born, even crawls towards its mom's food source, right? But what something that Kerry brought up a couple of months ago, which I wasn't surprised by, but I didn't know, was that the reason why it's so traumatic for kids who've been adopted, right, is that their umbilical cord energetically takes 10 months to dissolve. So they are connected for the first 10 months of their lives energetically to their mom, which is why it's so important that the mother keep the child close to her for that first, call it the year, and that baby actually stays with you, sleeps with you, stays close to you, because it's a natural weaning process. So with babies that have been adopted, immediately as and especially because we're looking at forced adoptions here, and these forced adoptions are child trafficking. I mean, these kids are trafficked into the system in the most horrific ways, right? And very often, I mean, Kerry will tell you as well how they are divided into different grades. She was a B grade baby because she had red hair and she had all club foot. So she was classified as a B. I mean, and then made to work in the charcoal pits at the age of 5. It's just horrific. And this is just one person. I mean, we've interviewed a number of people on that channel, but really just exposing how important it is, for the child to be with the mother. And the minute that the umbilical cord is severed and that baby's given away, immediately that baby feels unsafe. And you're giving it to another mother. It doesn't recognize the smell. It doesn't recognize the sounds. It wants to be with its mom. So yes, there are times where I agree. Adoptions are important and probably sometimes very necessary. I know
I
one or
think they
two.
are necessary at times,
Absolutely. But when we're looking at the psychological effect that this has, and as you say, and especially when you haven't told the child that they've been adopted, and the child will suddenly, as you say, as a teenager, start playing up or whatever. And like Kerry's saying, like it feels like it's dying. Absolutely. The baby feels as if it's dying. It doesn't have its life source, its life force. So these are really important things that we need to understand about each other and ourselves, because the world is filled with people that have been adopted or trafficked or given away. And those first 10 months or that first year of their life, especially, has been such a traumatic thing. It's like trees being ripped out and just left with their roots in the air and expected to grow like normal trees, right? With a branch in the earth type thing. So, I mean, these are really important topics that we really have to, and as you said, all forms part of the family unit, and how in many instances, these guys know this. They're not stupid. The creatures of the night and our dark brothers and sisters, they know this. And that's why they have done terrible things to kids in the womb, to babies, to little kids, for centuries already, because they know when that connection is severed, the child doesn't stand much chance of a happy, fulfilling, and connected life, right?
Right. But I think that, there's this interesting spiritual aspect in all that too. When you look through, the Old Testament and stuff, the spiritual position of women was changed right after birth, where, because they were bleeding, they would be considered unclean for 7 days after the birth. And that would mean, that they weren't supposed to go into the temple or go before the Lord or be among other people. If they were, like, those people were considered unclean as well. So oftentimes you see that as a period where, the man and the wife are supposed to just be with their family unit, seeking the Lord and consecrating themselves, thanking the Lord for that time together. Then you see on the 8th day, like for males, that's why they would circumcise on the 8th day, which that circumcision represented, the rolling of the reproach away. It was at the city Gilgal, as Joshua and those who were part of the Israelites as they were coming into the new land. The Lord had them stop at Gilgal to circumcise themselves, and that word Gilgal means to remove the reproach. So, it's interesting when you look at that spiritual aspect. There's different things in there. Why did God, tell them that they had to, separate themselves from the main body of individuals? I think it was really a time for them to bond, to look at their lives, to, thank the Lord. You have different cultures where, they will wait the 7 days, and on the 8th day, like the women after they've given birth will go into the ocean and wash themselves, and then they'll have a huge praise and worship ceremony, where they're thanking the Lord for her life and the life of her child. So you get some cultures that do interesting things around that
Wow.
spiritually. But I mean,
Wow.
the enemies messed it all up. you know, like beyond the artificial wombs, we get into the cloning, which we've done episodes on that. Don't believe it. It's a fallacy. They're not able to, what they're doing is not actually cloning, which, cloning means like you would take something that is non-replicating, non-life. So like God, God literally, he took a rib out of the man, and out of that, not only did he not get a replica, exact replica of the man, he got something completely new. He got a
Right,
woman. So,
right.
but cloning in its essence is that, like you would take like a rib cell, and from that cell, you would get a complete identical copy of the person that it came out of. They're not able to do that. What they do is DNA, you know, transplanting or manipulation. Um, in that, they also, will early on, as the eggs are starting to form into a being, there's a multiplication phase, and that's where sometimes you'll get twins or triplets or um, quadruplets. So, what they've done in essence with what they're calling cloning is, taken those different methods, and at that stage, they begin to split into identical twins or triplets, quadruplets, um, where they get people then that are genetically exactly the same. But in
Wow.
that process, we have to remember that each child has a soul. In their mind, they'll say there isn't souls, that only one of them has a soul. The other ones are soulless, and therefore not considered human. Um, but I think every child does have a soul. I think that they just have found ways to suppress that.
Absolutely. I just want to backtrack a little bit, if you don't mind. You spoke early on about the white roses and the blue roses, and I've just had one or two questions in the chat here.
Yeah.
Sorry, the red roses. What are the blue roses and what are the yellow roses? Can you just expand on that for us?
Yeah, so
What
the
the blue
blue
rose?
roses are connected to the order of the blue rose, which in that you have high-level women who, elite women who are part of that order, who are going to sponsor. Usually it's boys, it can be girls. That order also has a connection with Mary Magdalene, those who carry the seed of Christ. So there's some, messed up stuff in that where, they really elevate the children born, especially if they're male children, as gods. So as you get deeper, we know that the symbology we see of Mary and Jesus is really not about Mary and Jesus. Really, it goes back to Nimrod and his mother, Samarius, who, was there was an incestuous relationship between the mother and the son. So, if that gives you some imagery of how deep that really can go with those blue roses, um, do they have elite women who, are breeding to produce these, boys that they elevate as gods, and then further, they basically have these incestuous relationships and continue trying to breed further gods with them.
I was going to
So,
say, sorry, if it's an incestuous relationship and if it's a woman that is now revered to be breeding these gods or demigods, whatever they are, it would be, they would then, I would imagine that would be a lot of the royalty or these people that are trying to keep it in the family, right? So often you're going to have like the small, that to me would feel like it's a smaller sect, if you will, of
mhm.
people who are interbreeding like anything or keeping the chosen seed or whatever it is and then impregnating. Would it always be a sexual type relationship or some type of artificial insemination? that occurs there?
I guess it could be either or,
Right.
are they doing that, where now, maybe now the boys aren't even fully aware. Um, so
Wow, that's crazy.
yeah, so the yellow roses are consistent with, their priestess programs. Um, those that are bred as priestesses, it could be male or female. Um, if male, usually they're looked at more as they're going to kind of be reared as a eunuch, as they would call them in the old days, where they're not going to be considered, boys that would be bred. Um, they're going to find a way to make sure that they're not producing heirs or children. Sometimes the same with the women, they're not going to be
Why?
producing heirs.
Would they not be deemed important enough, or is their genes not good enough, strong enough? I don't know, whatever enough. Is that why they do that? And that also, I mean, when you're looking at the men born like to become eunuchs and stuff, that to me would also seem like it's part of the inversions, right? Because you're seeing a lot of
Yeah.
the inversions happening, and we're going to talk more about that actually on solutions at the next show, after next show, around this, with a lot of the elites and stuff, the Hollywood people that invert, especially their firstborn children. And we're seeing a lot of what seems to be now a lot of stars or celebrities or even royals that it's so obvious they are like not women, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are women. They've been brought up as women and obviously transgendered at some point in time, but they are not women. And you can see it in the bone structure. You can see it. There's lots of ways to actually see what that is. But yeah, sorry, I'm just interested to know about.
I think it's because they, a lot of how I've seen it being used, especially like in Hollywood or other places, is that you have those who are going to beautify the women or the men who are desired to, be bred within the system. So, it seems like those priests or priestesses took on more of the role of, investing in others, beautifying others, bringing out those traits, making them desirable and biddable.
Wow.
So you get a whole bunch more into that. It's pretty, in depth because, hold on, technical issue. But, they also, as the priest or priestesses, their job is going to be a lot of coming alongside of, like, how I could explain it best is kind of working as or coordinators. So,
Right.
those are going to be the individuals who will come alongside of the high priests or the grand high priests in the area. They're going to help coordinate the events, do a lot of the hosting things, set up the parties, so the preparation could be more than just focused on people. It could be focused on locations that are going to be used ritually, um, but kind of, preparing, getting places ready or people ready for certain times, events, um, things that are involved in the system.
Someone is just saying, looking towards heaven for Jesus, that she was in this Yellow Rose program, and she was saying that they often have a twin. What would the reason for that be, that the Yellow Rose survivors usually have a twin? Any idea what that's about?
I'm not familiar with that. I think throughout each of the programs, you have some that have twins, some that don't. And, if they were real twins, um, that could be throughout any of those rose situations. or, in the system, they'll do twinning, with those that are going to be um,
Excuse me.
your training partners in the system for the projects or the programs that you're involved in. So,
Wow. That makes sense. That certainly makes sense. Wow, wow, wow. And it's like, yeah, just, and these adopted kids. I mean, I want to just see if I've got pictures here. But I know I have quite a few on the other channel that we were going into. Oh, actually, I do. And it's, yeah, maybe this could even be, the rock is a very interesting one, actually, because it's very clear to me, if you look here, this is the rock's wife, ex-wife, and his daughter. Now, that ex-wife is not a woman. Look at that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What do you say about that, Jessie? Why would that be? I mean, it's like when we're looking at a lot of these inversions and stuff, and as you say, eunuchs and stuff like this, would this be part of that then?
I don't know. It's hard to tell, Chantelle. Sometimes they're, especially if they're into the bodybuilding, you get a lot of women that their features do look more masculine. So I think it's really hard to say for sure.
Well, I think one of the things that is when you speak to any transgender person who has had from male to female, the first thing that they do is have their hairline sorted, because the male hairline is generally a lot further back than the female hairline. To me, when you look at that hairline, that's a boy. Anyway, I just
Yeah.
find that very
There's
interesting.
features that are hard to hide, sometimes between men and women.
Yeah. But and when we're looking at these, I mean, you're looking at a lot of these actors and things, and I don't know, maybe I can just show some of the pics now. It might just be part of what we're saying. It's like, look at this. This would be like humiliation rituals, right? That looks like Richard Branson to me, right?
It does look like Branson
Would
for
this,
sure.
I don't know. I mean, and a lot of the men are actually born women as well. So I'm not wondering how that all the time works, because it's clear that a lot of them don't have their own babies. So they would either have surrogates, right? Are we looking at surrogates and things in the system? Just an interesting way to look at that. Because again, surrogacy, I mean, if you look at, I mean, and one of the first families that come to mind for me, the Kardashians, they're big into their surrogacy. Kim had, I think, two, Chloe, another one, whatever. I know the only one that's apparently got her own children was Courtney, but they're the ones that stick out in my mind with surrogacy. So again, that's that whole, yeah, they might be using the egg and the sperm of her and her partner, but obviously putting
Yeah.
it. Explain to me how that. I mean, I know how it works, but why do they do that? I mean, because that baby that is born in that mother's womb would surely be connected to its mother that's carrying it, rather than the DNA, right?
Yeah. I think it's vanity, but it's a very old system. The Egyptian women used it. We see it described in the book of Genesis with um, Pharaoh's. They believe it's either his sister or niece. Um, but the story is that when Pharaoh sent out the decree for all the midwives to kill the Hebrew children, that Moses's mother uh, made a wicker basket and sent him down the Nile River, and he ended up in the courts of Pharaoh's, um, we'll just say, daughter. And when she saw the baby, she said, "Look, the gods have given me a baby." And so she, you know, adopted him then and there. And with that, then she had to look for a nursemaid. So I think that for a lot of these elite women, I think behind it really is vanity, that they, want to keep the physical appearance of their body and, don't want all the challenges that come after giving birth or from nursing. And so, they will then get surrogates or, women that will nurse their babies for them. Um,
That to me again would say that that baby is well aware that that's not its natural mother. So even though it's getting food, it knows it's not its natural mother. So it's again taken away from its natural mother at birth, right? Given to its DNA
right.
mother. And again, to me, that would be another way of just creating confusion in children, because we know that children are, or babies, infants, are a lot smarter than what we've ever given them credit
Hmm.
for. So again,
Yeah.
that to me would just be and you look at the whole system. I mean, and it's well known. Beyonce with one of her babies, I don't know which one. I mean, she was sitting down, and I think it was an Australian talk show, and literally you can see her baby bump cave in as she sits down. So it's obviously not a proper baby bump. So some surrogate,
Right.
yeah. So some surrogate mother, no doubt, was carrying that baby. But yet her kids look so much like her. So how does that work actually? I mean, how do they, and especially with a lot of these celebrities that are actually born male, let's say, and then become
Mhm.
female, right? How do they get their kids to look so much like them?
I mean, it's interesting how that works out. Is it because you're in a family unit that you then begin to look like, and whether that's just, maybe not even naturally, maybe it's just that, you begin to pick up characteristics, things that qualities that then people are like, huh, they kind of look like that. Or
Makes
is
sense,
there a
yeah.
way, like, do they have somebody who messes with genetics? They're looking for,
Right,
mothers with certain shaped eyes, noses, and they
right.
mathematically figure out, what are the chances of getting these characteristics in a child by combining, this egg with this sperm.
Makes a lot of sense. Or even if they take it from the mother, right? Or
Right.
from one of the siblings or something like that, that maybe looks a lot like them,
Yeah.
right? So they could then maybe, and as you say, mold them, morph them into these superstar kids. I just find it fascinating how that's actually done, because yeah, I mean, but there again, I mean, even if they, yeah, who knows? I mean, I've also given up trying to
Right.
figure out how a lot of these things work, but I do accept that it works. So they're doing something about that. Wow. Yeah, Kerry,
Yeah.
I think what
Curious and
Kerry's saying,
curious. Or
yeah, Kerry's saying, do not just transfer the egg and the sperm. Yeah, but they would do that, but I'm just saying, if like, let's say, one of the parents is not naturally a mother, like let's say she's been inverted at birth, she's not going to have the eggs, right? That she can
right.
then mix with the natural father's sperm, because often they're both inverted. So they don't really have what it takes to make a baby. Um, but then that to me is a question: why do a lot of these celebrity kids actually look so much like their parents? But it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. And it's just, yeah, and they pushed into the limelight at these early ages. I mean, you're seeing, for
Hmm.
example, Beyonce's little daughter now standing with her singing on stage, right? Um,
Yeah.
Same, I mean, it's like they're competing with each other. Kim's daughter as well, being pushed into the limelight. It's crazy what they do. It's
Yeah.
just crazy what they do. Anyway, well, I'm not sure if there's anything. I know we're going to carry on the other channel. But is there
Yeah.
anything you just wanted to maybe end off with before we? There's a lot that, and I think we could really. I mean, next week I think we could carry on with a lot of stuff. Oh, you know what I wanted to actually ask you? Maybe that's something we could carry on with here. That, you know, when we're looking at this, also, you know, I think you were talking about the yellow roses where they, you know, they're obviously surgically changing people. But would that also not then also the next step be this whole vanity program? Because I know when the fallen ones came, they brought vanity to the earth as well, makeup, and I think that's where a lot of the Egyptian goddesses and things were so
Yeah.
beautiful, and even the men. And when we're looking at plastic surgery and the amount of people going, I mean, I did actually, for those of you interested, I did a show with Bryce last week, which is very interesting. We were talking about plastic surgery. There are mothers who are injecting their 8-year-old kids with Botox, and they don't see the harm in that. I mean, there is just something so catastrophically wrong with that, right? But the whole age where we're going to now, that of the plastic surgeons, and again, it started with just wearing a bit of makeup and lipstick and looking pretty, right? And now it's just, you know, women taking on a completely different shape. What is that about? I mean, from, you know, I mean, to me, that although it's not the family, it's not exactly linked to like the breakdown of the family. It links to the breakdown of the human spirit, in my opinion, because we're feeling that we are not good enough, that we are not pretty enough, that we are not accepted enough, right? We have to look in a certain way to be loved or accepted. I don't know. What is that in the system?
I think, you know, I think really at the crux of that, like you said, you get emotional responses where people are not satisfied. Instead of, you know, working with what God's given them, or, you know, working within a normal means, like, you know, let's say it's a heavier set woman, you know, there are things that you can do to lose weight, to, you know, be happy and pleased with yourself, to feel like you're more attractive, you know. So what you see happening is that, you know, God's design, maybe I'll put it that way, God's design is that, you know, if there's things that we're unhappy with, were to go to him, some of those things like weight can be changed, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes God makes people the most unique things that he gives us that for a reason, you know. And sometimes it's for a testimony. Like, you know, I remember when I was having my gallbladder issues, I kept saying, why? You know, why me? Why do I have to have this? I went through everything I could to try to save that gallbladder, including, you know, completely changing my diet, my lifestyle. Did that for 3 years. And then one day, you know, it decided to go out. That was it. It was done. And there was no option but to have it surgically out. And, you know, it's like, why? Why couldn't it just, like, I did everything I could to save that gallbladder. Why did I still have to have it out? 4 weeks after my surgery, I was back at work and, you know, went into this one room, and it was a woman who also had to have emergency gallbladder surgery, and she was a mess. You know, she was so terrified of surgery and was like, I can't do this. And I was like, "Oh, I just went through that." I was like, "You'll be fine." And she's like, "No, really?" And I'm like, "No, seriously,
Right.
like 4 weeks ago, I just had it out." And,
Right.
anyway, later she called me back and thanked me, and she's like, "I think you had to go through that just so that I would have peace going through my surgery." So,
Right.
you know, are the unique features or characteristics we're given, are they given for a reason? And, you know, where's that point, you know, where dissatisfaction and contentment meet? Um, you know, are we to be content, and to what extent? You know, thanking God for the way He made us. And what I see with the vanity is you get people that are procuring their own way. That, you know, they find that there's no way that God's going to allow the change, so they make it happen. They make it what they want it to be, and there's a price to that. You know, how many of these women later on have major issues because of that? Many people don't know this, but I had worked with a woman who used to be, you know, heavily in that scene of Miss Universe. You know, they cake on the makeup. In her 80s, literally, she had these massive crevices in her, I mean, big crevices in her face from wearing makeup all the time. You
Right.
know, so it's like, what was the price that she paid to have that beauty in her younger age? You know, she certainly was not beautiful in her old age. And, you know, is everything that we're doing weighed in line with that? With, you know, what testimony, what story are we going to have to share with the next generation, with our children,
Right.
you know? And what's the cost or price? You know, what does Botox do to the body at such a young age? Does it cause implications that may in fact impact, you know, that girl's children, you know?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's just crazy when you're seeing how many botched jobs there are. I mean, there's one girl that I actually posted something on my Facebook pages. She went for Botox, and the one eye drooped, and the other one was doing this. So the one was wide open while the other one was drooping. I mean, it's the most scary looking thing. If that was my mother, and she was coming to say goodnight to me at nighttime, I'd be running from her if she looked like that. It's so scary. And what? All in the name of having a few less wrinkles. It's so,
Right. I
and I
can't
think this
judge,
is
you know, I had my good grandma, you know, used to do funny stuff, had dentures, and those would come out, and, you know, she'd come and be like, you know, you get the little old ladies that are, you know, chasing after you for a kiss, all good fun, you know, it was totally just fun and humor, and that was something that I just, you know, there's things that you learn to appreciate about people, you know?
absolutely, and we're all really beautiful in our own way, aren't we? And I think we've just had to learn, we've just got to learn how to be comfortable in our skin with the body that God has given us. And I just think it's so important to be able to appreciate who we are. And
Mhm.
and I think that is, when I look at holistically this battle that we're in right now with the dark forces and really about where we're at, it starts with ourselves. And this is one of the things, we have to be strong uniquely and individually within our spirit, within our emotions, within our mind, and within our body. There's not just one aspect, there's all four of those aspects that make up the human being. And if
Yeah.
one of those aspects of ourselves is imbalanced, we're in trouble. So, the first is to pray over it and to have your faith, right? But the next thing, we have to start believing that. And we have to
Mhm.
start feeling that we're beautiful enough. Even if we do have a mole on our nose or not the prettiest nose or whatever, right? And as you say, things like weight can be
Mhm.
changed. I
Yeah.
mean, someone who's really, really overweight, it's not healthy for your body to begin with because you're carrying, it's like literally having 60 pounds of bricks over your
Mhm.
shoulders. So you might want to do that for yourself because you would feel healthier. So you then take the responsibility of changing that which you can, right?
Mhm.
And when you start doing that, that starts opening up a whole lot of other things as well. You start seeing the world differently. And then, the body starts feeling different as well. Then you are fit spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically fit on all levels to take on this battle. And I really
Mhm.
think that's what we need to look at. And then we can also look after those around us. When we take care of ourselves first, we can then take care of those around us. And it's not in an egoistic way. It's not in a selfish way. It's really understanding I need to be strong enough to take care of my family and the ones that I love. If I'm not strong enough, it's pointless, actually. Anyway.
Yeah. And maybe God made you the way you were based on, you know, the good works that he's prepared in advance for you to do. You know, I
Absolutely.
often say that about height, you know, that, you know, I've had some people who are really tall complain, like, why can't I be shorter? And I would just say, you know, you're the height God needs you to be for the things he's prepared for you to do, you know?
Exactly. Why can't I be taller? Sorry, did someone squeak down there?
Well, because when that when that taller person gets older, they're gonna certainly have a hard time leaning down and grabbing stuff out of those lower cupboards. But
Especially if
guess
you haven't
what?
taken
They're
care of
gonna
your
need that person who can reach the things on the lowest shelf.
Exactly. So you're gonna need your shorty friends. And the shorty's gonna need your tally friends.
Yeah.
But as long as we appreciate what we have and we realize that we have our amazing bodies for a reason and our brains and our emotions, you know, we have all of this for a reason. Anyway. Okay, well, guys, we're gonna knock off from here now, and it's 3:54 now. So it's nearly 4 o'clock. So I'm gonna say 4:15 on solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa. We're gonna continue on with Jessie as well. So, Jess, would you like to end off?
9:15 Eastern.
Yeah, 9:15 Eastern, guys.
You're so skilled at that now. we've for the most part, except for when the time changes again. I think we get the time thing figured out.
Yeah. I just know it's an hour now. An hour. I go an hour later in summer, and that's cool. I'm happy with it. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, Jess, do you want to end off for us in prayer?
Yeah. Heavenly Father, we just give to you all the things in our lives today that we are dissatisfied with. We ask, Lord, that you would help us to treasure the things that you have given us, that these are the things that you've adorned us with, and let us not despise the gifts. Lord, give us grace to change the things that we can, but also give us grace to accept the things that we can't change. And we ask, Lord, that you would help us to know what true satisfaction and contentment with ourselves is. Um, Forgive us for the times that we've been ungrateful and dissatisfied. And we ask, Lord, that you would help us to see the beauty that you have given to each of us and that you would help us to display that beauty well. We ask that in your powerful name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jess.
Yeah.
Okay, guys and girls, I shall see you then in 20 minutes on Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa. And by the way, for those of you who watch Caleb's show tomorrow, he is on tomorrow night. He is coming on Thursday. Yay. So I thought I would give him a night off because he hasn't been well and I got severely wrapped across the knuckles. I was squeaked. So Caleb is on tomorrow night, guys. Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And I hope to catch you all back on Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa in just a few minutes. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Really great to always have you guys on the show with us. And God bless you all. And we'll see you on the flip side in just a moment. Cherry bye.